episode of the podcast is brought to you by LeafWell.
Hello, Cannabinoid Connect listeners. Have you ever thought about getting a medical card? The process can be intimidating and hard to navigate. That's why I've partnered with LeafWell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and 32 other states in the U.S. LeafWell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. LeafWell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis. LeafWell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I've mentioned, I've partnered with LeafWell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. LeafWell only charges you if you get approved, so what do you have to lose? Visit their website at leafwell.com today and use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis. Risk-free. Mr. Robert Head, what's up, man?
Hey, Kevin, how you doing? Good to see you today.
I'm doing well. It's great to see you as too. It's good to have a fellow Texan on the podcast. Always enjoy that.
Yeah. There's several of us in this industry.
That's right,
Yeah.
man. Well, Robert, I'm really excited to be talking with you today. I mean, you being a veteran yourself and knowing the current, mental health crisis that we're all currently living in. I would say it's a global pandemic at this point, but even more so for the veteran community, who've been overseas, who've been on the front lines, right? Experienced combat and really traumatic, life-changing experiences where this group needs help. And so really excited to be talking with you today and your role as chair for Hemp for Victory. And what all y'all are doing within the space. But before we, jump ahead, Robert, let's first start with you. I mentioned that you are a veteran. You served in the Army as an infantryman from 2002 to 2007 with deployments to Iraq. So tell us a little bit about your journey, man, and some of your experiences as a military serviceman and what led you kind of to the path today.
I got into the Army late. I was 23 years old, I think, when I got in, and I was a big guy. I'm a big guy still. I'm 6'2" or 6'3", about 300 or 285 pounds.
Damn.
And I'm just a big guy, right? But when I was about 22, I was 370 pounds. So I had to lose 100 pounds to get in the military. But I was at a point in my life, and like a lot of veterans, especially the enlisted guys, a lot of them just like they didn't have a place for them, right? Other than just working a job, drinking, boozing, but there was no motion in my life for purpose, right? When I say emotion in my life, there wasn't anything I was doing in order to accomplish something that was going to get me somewhere else down the road.
Were you always obese, or were you an athlete prior? Or
yeah, I was always just a big dude. Yeah, my whole family's big guys. But the military taught me that, when you get out, a lot of us bloom back up, not to the point where we were at, but we all gain a little, that weight back because you're not working out nearly like you were in the military.
Right.
And so, but we do have the discipline to understand how vital that is. Moving is so vital to living. And so we definitely understand that. And we can unpack that down the road because a lot of that understanding of how moving and living is so important. A lot of vets have a hard time moving right now, for a number of reasons. So for me, when I got into the military in 2000, and I actually signed up a couple of days before 9/11, and 9/11 happened, and I was like, well, how about that? You're kind of thinking to yourself, you're going into peacekeeping, then all of a sudden you're being trained like you're the first infantry unit to be trained for war during wartime. And so that was kind of an interesting experience.
Sure.
And I got to Baumholder, Germany when I was in after my duty first or my basic training and AIT. I went to it's called Baumholder, Germany, and it was an old SS camp, German SS camp. And in the base, you can see swastikas that are built into the foundation of buildings. You can't remove them, or you remove the structural foundation. It's crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're right there. And so I had a barracks that was like 3 or 4 barracks down from this building that had a swastika in the side of it. You just can't. You can do. I mean, that probably covered up with a sign or whatever over a period of time. But they kind of left it so you could see it. And so you could remember, like, hey, the hate that was there was insane.
That's what I'm saying. It speaks to the history, right? And the time.
Yeah.
I mean, they built it into the foundation. It was such a
yeah, not even just built in the foundation. Like if you remove it, you ruin the structure. And then at this point in time, they were historical, right? Because it's been 50, 60 years down the road. So they're kind of historical buildings. So they really couldn't touch it. Either way, it was quite interesting to see. And I did 2 deployments to Iraq. So I did a total of 29 months in country in Iraq. I was always in the front lines. So I had, I saw the downplay of Saddam. I saw the creation of the insurgency. I was there for the transfer of banking. I was there for the first election. I was, there was a lot of things that happened that were so significant and historical there that I had front row seats.
Were you there when they pulled the statue down?
No, so I wasn't in the 3rd ID. I was in 4th Infantry. I was in 1st Armored Division that came down later, but I saw the statue, and I was there at the Cross Sabers. We were there. That wasn't there actually. That was 3rd ID. And I do have a buddy of mine that was there.
Wow.
That saw it get pulled down. So we saw a lot of things. I can remember being out in sector when Saddam Hussein was caught. And I can remember hearing over the radio them saying the Ace of Spades has been caught. The Ace of Spades has been caught.
He was in some like hole, wasn't he? Like they pulled him out
some hole.
Yeah.
And I wind up going to the guy who wind up catching him. Is the colonel at the time. His name escapes me with confidence right now to say it, but anyways, he was my next colonel. And that dude was very intimidating, extremely intimidating. He was a hardcore son of a bitch. But you get an opportunity when you make a decision so huge in your life is that I'm going to uproot myself and only myself. And I'm going to go into a system that's going to prep me for war and teach me some tricks of the trade and some skill sets that I could possibly use when I get out. It'll give me a discipline that I need. It'll give me a paycheck that I desperately need. Help me get out of debt or whatever it is that I need to do to get my purpose in life. And that's what it was there for. So a lot of us that were enlisted, such as myself, came in from that perspective that this is a life-saving tool that I'm going to use for myself for the next 4 to 5 years or however long they wind up staying in. And so when you fast forward that to now and you see those same enlisted guys with that mentality like I spoke of earlier, right? Where this is just kind of who they are. They want to constantly do the right thing, but they know they need to move, to live. They know how important their body is. As it starts to break down in their 30s and 40s, they're looking around. There's other 30s and 40s that are not. They're not breaking down like them.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of things that kind of, it's like a wave every time of kind of depression, and it gets to these guys and they're on a lot of pills and they're suffering. And what at least in my experience, I've noticed is cannabis has given a lot of these guys, and I speak a lot especially with Hemp For Victory from an enlisted perspective. We have a lot of scientific perspective. We have a lot of political science perspective that are subject matter experts, right? Todd Scatini, Dr. Corey Birchman. We have General Todd Bunting that's also on our board. These guys that they know the science behind it. They know the data that really makes an impression when you create legislation. But there's another aspect. There's a human aspect that we know about. There's a human aspect that's very hard to put on paper and connect data points, but you see it. It's that gut feeling
It's
you
that
have.
anecdotal, right? I mean, it's experiential.
Right.
You kind of see it in front of you, and it's worth seeing it as opposed to even explaining it.
It is. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things that I got put into my plate. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a specialty, right? I'm a big Care Bear looking fool that is good at barbecuing, that was a vet. I'm just a big lovable guy that I really want to see a change in life. And as I talk to these guys who are very that have all this leadership ability, and they know what they're taking, I'm starting to find all these key individuals, and I group them together, and I say, hey, we have an argument. We actually have a way for the people who this isn't their expertise can understand, and not only understand, but now they have a connection to, right? Because they're veterans.
Right.
And veterans are they're like a snapshot of your general public, right? Because veterans are most of them are well educated. They have a high school diploma or more, or in some college level. You see that on an average, veterans earn more per capita or than the general public. And so these are people who are also involved more in their community. So these are the people that you really love to have in your community. Not, I mean, cannabis aside, but just in general, when things go awry, you want to have these kind of people there. Sure. Because they're going to help organize. They're going to help, keep that glue that is so important to a community to develop. Whether you're a state, whether your country, doesn't matter, a community. And we all know what that really is.
Right.
So that's an important thing. But at the same time, these veterans are dealing with far more mental and physical injuries than they've ever dealt with beforehand. Years and years past, a lot of these guys that got injured would have been dead. So they're living through their injuries, but we've gotten to, we're figured out the leg part, but we haven't figured out the damage to the brain for losing the leg. Right.
Well, I mean, I would take it a step further, right? I mean, the government in a lot of ways has failed the veteran community. I mean, there's little to no support at all. I mean, you would know firsthand, what is it like getting government aid or assistance, as a veteran? Is it, I mean, what's the role of the VA? How efficient are they? And I mean, give me the whole, landscape.
Yeah, I know my perspective on the VA is that, yes, it's not the greatest organization, but this is how government organizations are run.
Right.
Even the Canadian VA, we here think the Canadian VA has got to be great because they give, weed to their vets. They literally do. They pay for, what is it, a gram a day?
Really?
Or 2 grams a day? Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, they'll subsidize it. So I mean, it's essentially what's happening is they're subsidizing it.
Which makes sense. I mean,
yeah, might as well. I mean, you're spending all this money on pharmaceuticals. You could cut that in a third, and you'd still save money by, even if you grew your own, which you don't even have to, because you have so many people out there that know how to grow.
Right.
All you got to do is just make it create like a little shop where people can all kind of come together. They do this in Maine. Because in Maine, you can go to and they do this because it's cold as hell up there, but they go to like a warehouse or a big building, right? And everybody will have these tables. You go in and buy whatever you want. Just
open. Just check out
open.
this.
So
I grew this.
Hey, I'm looking for some salve because my knees hurt. I need some RSO because my uncle's got cancer, and I need a bag of weed because I like to go out and pipe and I like to go out and hike and camp. Oh, okay. You're gonna find them at these guys, 1, 2, 3, and they're all in this big building, and they call it the Mid-Maine Sesh. And about once every month or so, they put one on. Wow. And what the reason for that is because there's a lot of rural area out there, right? They need to be able to get to those people. Well, you got to let the community have the opportunity to react to it,
right?
Because they're going to be faster. So if we're veterans, when we say, do we want to be how much does the VA help? The VA helps out in really big things, and that's all I use them for. Like if I got a broken leg, I go to the VA.
So it's extreme cases is where they can kind of step in.
Yeah, because the normal day-to-day health. I mean, I have I got problems with my feet, my wrists, all sorts of stuff. I got 70% disability from getting beat up, and this comes with being a grunt, right? I got it. Being a vet, you're just gonna learn to live with pain, and we accept that. but I don't have to live in unconsciously, such bad pain that I'm having to take medication that keeps me from being part of my family and community and society that I want to be in, so richly want to be in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be an opportunity for a person to say, okay, well, how can I manage that pain? So where I'm very active in my community. And if cannabis does that, why are you eliminating it from me in the state of Texas or in the United States? And let's just say the United States, because if it's very different. California, the black market still reigns supreme, but we know it's 100% legal. No one cares, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one aspect. You go to Maine, same thing. Nobody cares. It's the black market's 50%. It's regulated. You can go get the same stuff at the local caregiver store or shops that are just right down the highway. They don't care. But if you go to Nebraska and if you go to Georgia and some of these other places, you're going to find it to be very, very different. And that's because no one's on the same page. And the complexity, and I know you've talked about this with, I've seen like Jim Belushi and all these other guys you've had on here, right, Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
I'm old enough to remember his brother, who's the brilliant comedian. So, well, when he was on here, I remember, hearing him all the time talk about the business aspect of it and how important, the banking system and everything is, so for them to be able to get the medication to the people that they needed to. He's 100% right. This is not fair that only the wealthiest are able to control the market in this industry because you've limited their ability to use the banks. And normally you would think that would be the opposite.
Right.
But because of that, you're not allowing access as easy as you could. And it's extremely complex because Jamaica can't make it legal, but they have it on the books as it's quasi-legal. If you're born there, you can use it. If you're a Jamaican, you have your right to it by birth, right? Outside of that, they have to keep it illegal because of trade agreements with the United States. But Canada doesn't give a shit.
Right.
Canada can be in violation of that exact same trade agreement they signed.
Yep.
So
it's I mean, sorry to cut you off. It's pretty wild. I mean, to kind of see how it's all playing out. And there are so many consequences for, the lack of banking, right? I mean, obviously it's a hit on the business efficiency and operations side, but then also like the crime and then the dispensaries that are targeted and the individuals, right? Because it's a cash only business. They, these burglars are coming in and they just kind of are targeting these places, and we're seeing it every day in the news unfold.
Right. And you're seeing them take crypto. Crypto is becoming more of more used in the cannabis industry now than ever before. And I don't think the cannabis industry really wants that.
Yeah, I get the same feeling.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I see, like, because I don't know much about crypto. I have zero investments in them. But after the whole
good
thing,
move, because it's like
right.
You dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. But you know how, like, when the whole FTX thing happened,
yeah,
the first question I had was that, wait a minute, I was told that nobody could steal out of your wallet. Like, I was told that there was no back door. Like, I was told that what you kept was what you kept.
That's what I was told too.
That you couldn't change things. And now all of a sudden that lie was your foundation to getting everybody on.
Yeah.
Because of how secure it was. You preached the security of it. And now we're seeing, what is it like? In the past 6 months, there's been 3 or 4 major frauds. Not like small. I'm talking like FTX was one. There was 2 other guys. I don't know what the names were, but
we're talking about billions of dollars. I mean, yeah.
Billions of people's hard-earned money, man.
It's crazy, man. And that guy that what's his name? Sam Freed Bankman.
Yeah, SPF.
SPF. Yeah, I forget his acronym. He would play World of Warcraft like on his phone in these meetings, and they just thought he was this brilliant, like, delicate genius, but really he was a
narcissist,
narcissist. Yeah, who just didn't give a shit. Or
narcissists are such charmers. It surprises me. I've been a victim of narcissistic people.
Yeah.
And man, they are charmers. And that's what he had to do. I mean, I guess he charmed. Elon made a point, and I like Elon Musk. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do like Elon Musk. I like that he doesn't see a problem as unsolvable.
Right. I like him too.
We just may not be at that human involvement yet to be able to solve it. And that's something I think more people need to accept. Right. We are all the time evolving, trying to get better. We're going to fail. We're going to fuck up. You know, it's just going to happen.
It's in our nature, Robert, right? Like humans, I think it was explained on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he explained it this way. It was really beautifully put. It's like humans are like a beehive. And like, what do bees do? They're just constantly like working in the beehive, right, to produce the honey, right? And like, and so we are, like you said, we're constantly evolving. We're constantly innovating and building and creating things. And in some ways, I don't think that can ever like that's just in our nature. You know what I mean? For the most part. And so
it is. And it's these movements that we see that help us advance, right?
Right.
When we talk about equality, not the equality you see preached on CNN and MSNB and everything. I'm talking about the real equality is that we want to make sure everybody has the same opportunity,
100%,
so that we can evolve as deep as best as possible. Because someone from the slums may have a great idea, but if they don't have the opportunity to refine those skills, they'll never find that idea that could have saved so much of humanity's doing this or that, you know. And that's one of the things. I remember someone made a good comment about when we talked about World War II and we talk about the Holocaust. Think of it in terms of all the art that was lost in those gas chambers. Think about it in the terms of all the scientific technology that was lost in those gas chambers.
You're so right. Yeah.
Think about that. That's what happened. It was, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's nothing great about what happened in that whole scenario during World War II. And as a vet, I'll tell you, you know, there's nothing worse than war in itself. But we also have to consider one of the greatest tragedies of war is how deeply it affects the future that we never see.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't think about that very often. I mean, it stifles growth, right? It stifles potential.
But at the same time, not only stifles it, but it makes growth more acceptable, and it happens more often, right? In certain areas, right? So during the war, we saw life-saving procedures that came about that were never there beforehand. I can remember having on the front lines, I would have doctors from all over the place who were they were working on the forward operating base with us. And they were ER doctors from some of the most prestigious hospitals across the nation. And they said, I'm here to learn, because you'll never see any type of injuries like you'll see here. You're not going to see that at home. And we can help based off what we know there. And when they came back, I mean, they were saving arms, they were saving legs, they were saving lives left and right. And it was amazing. And the advancement in medical technology that we were able to gain was remarkable. But could we have done it without the war? And I don't know that answer. I want to say that yes, of course, that's what the heart wants to say. The good person wants to say, yes, we could have found another way. I don't know if that's actually true.
I've never thought of it that way before, man. You kind of opened up a whole new way of thinking and a new perspective, right? When it comes to war and innovation, right? And what comes from war. Obviously not ideal, right? There's a lot of turmoil and whatnot, but like you said, it is a situation, it's an environment where humans are forced to adapt and innovate. And, I mean, because they kind of have to. So like your example of doctors coming in and just kind of being in the environment so that they could innovate, because it's unprecedented. It's not anything
it's never going to see that anywhere
normal,
else.
Right? So, wow.
The MASH hospitals had people from the Mayo Clinic and everywhere else there. Met some brilliant doctors, and I think that sometimes wars, they're going to cause both good and bad to come out of them. Everything has good and bad, everything, right? And there's a balance you got to have in life. If you want to do well in life, you need to have a balance. If You work so hard, you make a ton of money, and you have a family, but your kids grow up to be shitheads. You're like, well, what happened? You weren't there to be their dad, man.
Right.
You weren't there.
Right.
The money can't raise a child.
Right.
And so, you got to have a balance in your life. And so when we see after, that kind of war happens, and you have a lot of veterans that come home, and you're talking about, you 6,000-7,000 deaths or 8,000 to 10,000 deaths in the Afghanistan and Iraq war, but you have all these casualties that are coming back, missing limbs, problems, and with shell shock, and then the lung problems with all the fires and everything else out. So now you have this massive multitude of problems, and they started throwing just pills at everybody because they didn't know what they knew now. This was early 2000s. They had just been around just for a little bit, going on in Maine and California. We didn't really have a lot of the research that we have now. And so now you're seeing a change. Now you're seeing the people who were once always against it and who had leadership positions. They're now for it, and they're fighting and giving the data to support their arguments for being for it now. And that's
I'm
something
sure they're
we've
doing
not
that
seen.
because they're comparing, right? Because they're seeing the benefits compared to opioid addiction and kind of that rabbit hole that you can go through.
Correct, because a lot of these guys, especially when we talk about Hemp For Victory, our foundation, and what we do, we host discussions. That's it. We host a team of discussions all throughout the year about how cannabis and veterans are actually benefiting so much from cannabis, and here's the reason why. Right? For example, if we talk about opioids and cannabis, and we say, why is it that veterans are being prescribed these opioids and what's going on in their body? And we talk about it. We have doctors there who discuss it, but we also have a veteran there who's discussing what's going on in their life. When I was taking the pills, what was the social impact in my life? Because just because you take a pill, you got to consider the social impact on your life. Every medication doesn't have just a physical reaction. You got to consider the social reaction as well.
Mm-hmm.
And taking the pills would kind of make him into a zombie. Maybe it would just make him irritable. It'd make him drink more often. You would see that quite a bit. Or maybe you would see that they had to increase these pills because it caused another problem. So they wound up getting 3 or 4 pills extra within a year. And then now they started off going on 2 or 3, and in 5 years they're on 14 pills, and their wife doesn't even know who they are. And this happens a lot. And what we do, then we start talking about cannabis, and we start talking about how it reacts to the body. Okay, what happened in your social life? Well, I went from X amount of pills down to this amount of pills. Okay, let me stop you right there. Doctor, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then they explain what's going on in the body. And then we go back to him. Okay, what's going on in your life? How's your relationship compared with the pills and cannabis now with the wife and the kids? And that's going to be the point. I think that's, for at least for me, I know all the board has their all their personal things that they really want to see happen, and it's all beautiful. I mean, I love those guys. They're absolutely wonderful. And for me, I want to see a person be a better person, because for me, cannabis was it broke down a barrier inside my mind. I was on a lot of pills, drank a lot of whiskey, and I knew the person that I wanted to be. I knew the father I wanted to be. I knew the man that I wanted to be for my wife, but I couldn't get there. But it was like an invisible wall, and I could see myself, but I couldn't really get there. Cannabis started breaking that wall down, and I was able to improve upon myself. I was able to improve on what I knew I needed to improve on, not what the world thought I needed to improve on. And I found myself standing up on my own more often. I found myself far more loving and kind to my children and to my wife. And I always advise people to do this. People should always take time to look at what old dying people talk about. Listen to the old people in the world who are, they know it's their last couple of years, because we all got to die sometime, but they know it. Listen to the things they say, I wish I would have. You never hear anything about money. You'll never hear a thing about a boat or a car. Buildings, none of that. Business doesn't even seem like, I remember seeing people who were billionaires and millionaires that'd lose it all. If I could just have my wife and kids around and go do something with them, because now they don't even want to be around me, and that's not That's not the American dream. The American dream is having that family around you, that love and appreciation. It's not the Mercedes. No, it's actually a human dream, because the people in Iraq want the same fucking thing. People in Afghanistan want the same thing. They just want to be able to sit around with their family, enjoy each other, have full belly, lay next to a warm body, have a roof over their head so they don't get wet at night. You know, and we tend to really get out of whack on that because we see all these things that we want to do. And I know we're off on a tangent, so I'm gonna pull this back.
You're fine. I think about this often. It's like, imagine being like a billionaire, but being alone.
Suck.
That would suck, right? I
So
mean,
suck.
Because, and think about it in every aspect. You'd have like a big house, all these fancy cars and all that. Okay, but you're alone, right? So you're only enjoying it by yourself. And then the friends around you, they're probably not your friends. They're probably being disingenuous because they want something from you, or you're paying people to be your friend, whether it's an escort for a lady or a guy, or, you know, a friend that you just
Or
really
just
want
like letting them live in your house, and
yeah, whatever it is. And so it's just not authentic. So you're kind of living this like sad, lonely, fake life.
right.
And I totally get what you're saying. I want to get back to what you're talking about with that invisible wall and breaking it down, because, you know, there are naysayers or skeptics of cannabis. And when you kind of lay everything out on the table, if we put opioids down and we put alcohol, like liquor, whiskey down, and then we put cannabis, you know, opioids will not be a tool or any type of thing to be a better version of yourself. It's just not possible, because, you know, over time, we all know, we talked about the rabbit hole, right? You're taking more pills, you're taking more pills. You get physically addicted to it. You know, you're sunken on the couch. It's kind of a real downer that affects your emotions. And like you talked about earlier, the social aspect of who you're interacting with. Whiskey, I mean, it's a hit or miss, right? Some people can get really violent and aggressive with whiskey if they have too much. Others can get real happy and joyful, but they pass out eventually. You're kind of out, you know, and you don't have control of yourself. Cannabis, I see it as like a tool, right? I mean, the way you explained and how you were more loving and caring toward your family, your wife and kids. I mean, I see cannabis that it helps me in that same way as well, right? Because it makes you be more self-aware of what's around you and your actions, and more thoughtful about what you want to say. At least, you know, for me and you, I think. And
yeah,
so
I think so.
It's just I'm kind of putting it all on the table that way, because it's just such a, like, I could see if you didn't have experience with cannabis and you could kind of lump them all in one category and be like, it's an external substance, it's bad, it's, you know, whatever you've been told. But until you experience it, or at least you're open-minded enough to hear other people's experiences and how it's helped them, I think that can really start to change the narrative of what, you know, the skeptics and what they're.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we try to make sure that we bring across in conversations, especially with what we do. One of our board members, Todd Scatini, was in front of the command staff for Fort Leavenworth, and he had the same discussion. You know, show up, we tell them the data, what it looks like, what's going on when it comes to military readiness, when it comes to work that we can do in Ukraine and everything else, how hemp could be involved, that it could be a product in which they could be using to grow, and it would clean a lot of the fields up. They could use that fiber to start industries there and kind of help respur a lot of what was lost during the war. And so these are some of the things that we discuss and talk about with some of the subject matter experts that we have. But it's important that when we discuss the science and we discuss the political aspect of it and we discuss the social aspect of it with data points, and we talk about how veterans are 60% more likely to use cannabis. Why is that? If these veterans are also leading the general public in education, leading the general public in making money, and leading the general public in management and everything else, shouldn't that the fact that they are choosing 60%, whether they're in a legal state or not, to use cannabis as an indicator that this is something that's positive for our general public? And so in order to do that, you have to have those subject matter experts show up, make the discussion, and then the important link between that and the human aspect, which is more so where I come into play. I know these guys. I know some of the enlisted that'll be happy to come in and talk. And when I tell them, I'm like, just tell them your story, because the science behind what you're saying is going to be explained by the subject matter experts.
Right. They're going to
And
take care of that.
Yeah. And that's the reason why we needed to do this, and the reason why we felt Hemp for Victory and why Todd and I put this together was because there was missing piece in the cannabis industry for nonprofits when it came to discussion and education strictly for purposes for leadership, right? And we're not getting out there and talking to the leadership. Like we will host a couple of panel discussions on online and hopefully with like Weed and Whiskey or some people like that. And then we want to make sure that we're also visiting military bases and visiting VFWs and visiting these other places to talk about this with leadership involved, right? Leadership from military leadership, from industrial leadership. And we try to keep the community as like, well, if we have a discussion, there may not be any more than 10 or 12 people in the room, but we want to continue to have those discussions. And those discussions are where a lot of change happens. And I think that's what a lot of people thought. So we get those behind the door discussions that they see us online and they see us talking about it all the time with the podcast, with the professional panel discussions, which are set up differently. I set them up in the manner that I'll bring, like, I'm going to do a religion one. We'll have a Muslim faith, Christian faith, and Jewish faith there. And we hand them over questions. What does using this, this is a scenario, how would your religion handle it? And we let them each one talk about it. That way what we're doing is we're asking questions from that people are really concerned about, and letting the subject matter experts sit there and talk to us in front of us. Instead of trying to piece it all together across the internet, we're kind of bringing it all one lump sum, which builds us legitimacy to get these other conversations with, Fort Myers or Fort Leavenworth or Benning or any of these other places that you want to go and you want to speak with. And that's the focus of what we do. And the reason why I feel like you need to have those conversations is that it takes cannabis from being a stoner's problem to an American problem, with a focus on their veterans and actual military leadership. Because right now they're having a hard time meeting numbers, and the more easier the access gets to people 18 and over, they're going to at some point in time have to legalize, or and the president can't just say, well, it's legal for people who are in the military. That can't happen. Like, people think that it can. That's not how the world works. It has to be done by legislation. Right. It'll take 20 years to get done the other way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can totally see the value in what y'all are doing with Hemp for Victory and leading with discussions. It's almost like, because humans like stories, right? We like storytelling, we like narratives, and to hear someone firsthand who has benefited from the plant and they can share their experience and share their story, share their truth, it's almost more impactful than someone like talking about the science. I mean, all that is important. I think that's supporting data, right?
Yeah.
Supporting information, but to really connect with someone by sharing a story that's relatable, especially within the veteran community, I mean, that totally makes sense.
Much like what you're doing, bringing people from across the cannabis space, and you bring them on the show, and we talk about, whatever the topic is at the time. And then as you start talking, they become organic and they grow on their own. And you start maybe not solving issues, but you start seeing where, hey, these things are important. We know these people, or you can bring people together under a blanket of similar issues that they both agree with. And it starts strengthening the community. Yeah. And the cannabis industry. And the cannabis industry is not nearly as cutthroat as some of these other industries, but don't think that it's still not either. Like, there's still that black market aspect in this industry. And so people can, they need to be buyer beware. I'm not a person who you would come to and say, hey, can you write me out a business plan? We don't do those kind of things. And the other thing too, I'd like to add is that we are not a platform for politicians. And so I want to make sure that's really clear. We're not red, blue, or anything. We don't do that. We're green. We're military
Smart.
people.
Yeah.
And the
There's
reason
no need
for
to. Yeah.
there's no need to. I feel like if you want to be a great leaders in this nation, do not necessarily need to be politicians. I mean, when Matthew McConaughey here in Texas decided he was not going to run for governor, I was so thrilled
Me
because
too.
I thought to myself, not because I don't think he'd be a good governor or whatever, he might have been. We'll never know. But that's not where his leadership falls.
Right. Stay in your
Like,
lane. And I mean that with respect. It's like,
yeah, because he can get more accomplished that way.
Right.
He could impact far more lives doing that than some, because that's like politics in this machine called America. It's corrupt as shit.
It's so corrupt,
so bad.
man. It's
Like,
so corrupt. And
this past 2 years, I thought like Russia and other people were corrupt. I'm like, okay, so apparently we're all in the same level of corruption.
It's insane. Well, the government, of course, but then also big pharma, man. I really, I mean, we all saw, over the course of the last 3 years, now 2 years, that in my view, big pharma is evil. They're just straight up evil, all profit, leading with profit, and that's it. They really don't care about consumer safety. It's pretty wild to see. And a stat that really just shocked me was, and it's related to what we're saying. We're gravitating now, it seems like, more toward open dialogue, right? People want to talk. They want open conversation. They want open thinking, and podcasts are a great medium for that. We're seeing that. And with mainstream media, like, it's always like your thought, and then it's like, we'll be back with quick commercial break, right? It's like always going to commercial break. And this stat that I heard was so compelling. It's 75% of the advertising commercials that are like played within mainstream media are coming from the pharmaceutical industry. So
I'd be surprised.
It's just,
I mean, I only watch the morning news, right? And then I pretty much turned off everything else I get through.
I don't watch any of it. I mean, the only show I'm watching now on mainstream media, and I actually like it, it's Special Forces. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it. I keep seeing that, like, people are wanting to go through that.
I know, man.
I didn't want to go through it.
And I was thinking, this poor lady, I forget her name. She was like a 90s star. My wife had to remind me who she was, but I was like, man, it's so fucked up that her like manager signed her up for that, because dude, like, she had no chance. And like, not even that, like the first exercise, like the first thing, she was like, she said she had neck problems. She had to get in a neck brace and get carted off. And it was just and I feel bad for her. I'm not like making fun of her. I'm like, she totally was not ready for that at all. And like, just do it, get out there. It's like,
people. So when they were talking about that, I think to myself, I'm like, when you put a packet in to go to Special Forces, okay, you're training like ridiculous type training, because this is just selection. Like, all they're doing is getting to go to selection, which is like 6 weeks long, and they go to selection. And if you make it through selection and you don't get hurt, they don't tap you out, and you don't tap out, that doesn't mean you're in. That just means you made it through selection, and that you have the opportunity to be selected. From there, if you're selected, you will go to certain schools to do whatever your specialty is going to be in. So there's like, you could be sergeant of arms or medic or engineer or something of that nature. And so you'll send you to your specialized school, and they do like specialized stuff, right? The medics out there are unbelievable. The Special Forces medics can replace your spleen, using white walls, all under fire.
Do magic.
Yeah, this is amazing, right? So, I mean, it's extremely high skill set, but it is extremely hard. It's very physically rough, and you really do have to put, like, that's who you put forward. If you have a family, they're second. That's who you put forward. But those guys really, they gotta put a lot of work in. How
savage are those dudes?
Dude, they're great. I love them.
Yeah,
I had no desire to ever do that. I worked with them. I was in the infantry, so I had a chance to work with Rangers and special operations. All those guys, wonderful, love them to death. But I also understood that I didn't want to be those people, so I never ever would like try to play that game. I was just a
Right.
grunt. And I was happy to do what I was doing. And they were like, hey, we're going to go get all hua and blow shit up. And I'm like, I'll go with you, but I'm not going to be the kind of guy that says, hey, I want a fast rope. I want to train to do all that, because I just never had a desire. Man, you got to have a desire.
That's what I love that you said that. It's a whole, you got to turn a switch on in your brain.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
really do. I didn't have that switch. I didn't want to do it.
No, and I got a taste of it because I wrestled Division 1 for like a year, and that is a whole other level. Like the first week of practice, I'll never forget. Like everyone in that wrestling room is a state champion, or like the man in their town or whatever. So like that first week was just like prove your worth, prove your value. It was all pride. I mean, there were guys throwing each other into the corners, like fist fights almost breaking out, and the coaches kind of let it go, like to a point. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty savage. So I can't imagine like that level, special forces or even the Navy SEALs. Like, those just come from a different.
They're good groups. I mean, when they really work together real well and they're cohesive, so it's a lot of fun. I don't know about a game show about it. I don't know. That seemed kind of odd to me. I was like, that's odd, but okay, whatever, guys.
I'm sure that they're downplaying the intensity and all that.
I bet, definitely. That's what Hollywood does. But
Nice.
it looked pretty neat, and I love the fact that in the United States, people have taken they do take to heart what goes on in the veteran community. And I know a lot of them are like, what can we do? We don't know what we can do to help. And
what can we do? That's what I was going to ask you. That's a perfect segue.
So, when we were talking about the VA. Well, a lot of what veterans go to is they'll go to these veteran like social organizations, right? Or these groups that are outside of the VA. And they'll get more help from there. A lot of those are just like nonprofits, much like us. So we see a lot of veterans do that. That's one reason, like we saw like Weed for Warriors come about, because people weren't getting the needs to veterans, and people were like, if people like to make an argument saying, "Well, you're getting weed guys. What do that's not a big deal." No, that is a big deal. That saved a lot of lives, and in the fact that you guys don't understand that, and I say you guys, the ones that are against it, is largely it tells me that you just have never been there. Mm-hmm. So what have you done in your life where you haven't been to the point where you hit rock bottom and you had nowhere else to go, and you needed to take care of issues in your body, but the medicine you had was keeping you from getting back on that ladder to crawl out of that pit that you put yourself in?
Right. It's a dark
because we're humans and we do that. We all fuck up.
Sure.
And if we have a strong community around us, that's what helps builds us up, and they bring us out of it, right? Mm-hmm. That's what giving without getting recognition is all about. Helping somebody without being recognized by it, because you're part of the community. That's the glue that holds us together. So, demonizing somebody for being in that position is not a good idea. No. The fact that they're giving them that medicine is saving a lot of guys' lives. So you see veterans kind of drift towards those organizations more so and have more confidence in them, which has zero financial backing that's going to be covered like the VA does, because they don't trust the VA. They feel like the VA's not got their best interest in it. They just want to take care of a problem, check it off, go to the next one. And every problem is a person. I know.
It blows my mind, man. Like, really.
It's frustrating.
I mean, I kind of assumed that was the case, but to hear it from you, like, it just solidifies it. Like,
and it's not that the people and the doctors are bad, and I don't want to demonize the individuals that are working there, because that's not right either. But there's a better way, and I think we need to find out what it is.
Right? I mean, it's
the bureaucratic system and structure, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing about cannabis in the VA is never going to actually happen unless legislation goes through and the president signs a bill saying that it's no longer Schedule 1 and just decriminalizes the whole thing. Let the states deal with it, which is really the best way to go right now, because of all the states that have already legalized it on their own terms.
Right.
So what it does is it allows federal issues to not be an issue anymore. Banking and all that can go ahead and start up and resume in certain cases. You can probably get FDIC insured through those a lot smaller. What do you call it? What's the banks that are local?
Just
credit
like
unions, credit unions that are doing.
Yeah,
because a lot of credit unions started doing banking for a lot of cannabis companies, despite being FDIC insured and stuff of that nature. So, that's really what we need to wait to happen, but because it's not happening, because they don't seem to have any interest in Congress for passing things that could help us out, but they'll pass quickly, 45 billion to give to Ukraine. Not that they don't need it, but I'm telling you, fighting wars is not all about money. And I don't know the whole situation going on in Ukraine. I just know I would like for it to stop, because children don't have a playground to play on, which they once did. And that isn't fucking right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't care. I'm not a red or blue person. I just want it to stop.
Right.
But if we can do that fast, then we can legalize cannabis so that states can start, using it or making their own programs. Veterans and the general public, and simply, right, the single mom that's working 2 jobs at the McDonald's or something like that, who's barely making ends meet, doesn't need to worry about getting fired for coming home and smoking a joint just to go to bed at night.
I know, right? That's what's
right.
wild.
That's just, it's not right. We don't treat people that way. That's not what people should do. We should be better than that. We should be kinder than that.
Right.
And
I think that this plant could really help, put us on the path of kindness and more thoughtfulness and whatnot, like we talked about earlier, because inherently that's kind of what it does. It stops you in your tracks, and really has you self-evaluate what's going on around you.
It does. I think it helps whenever I do a lot of meditating, and I got a little place in my room where I like to go, and I'll smoke and I'll read and I'll meditate, just to kind of think upon, how can I be better? How can I improve? What do I need to do, both for myself and my family? And I noticed that cannabis allows me to kind of think through that. Right. And it allows for me to, and then, it may not necessarily remember everything the next day, but it allows me to kind of work things out at the time mentally, and it makes me feel better. And so what I tell people is that veterans really do use cannabis like a tool.
Right.
It's there, we use to help us with whatever issues. I use it for anger management, believe it or not. And I use it for sleep and pain in my feet and my knees.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it every single day, because I don't use anything else. I don't have any other medication. I'm not on heart medication. I don't do anything else. I drink a lot of water. I try to exercise. My feet are all messed up, so I had to alternate my exercises. But I'm not unmotivated to go, right? Because I'm smoking weed. And that's never happened. I've completed all my projects. My kids are intelligent. They're all going to school, doing just fine. My wife and I have been married for 16 years, or happily married. We never get in fights. I don't have problems.
That's great. Yeah.
So I don't see it as I use the tools so that I don't have these problems. I'm not saying that it's making me money or any of that other stuff, but I am saying that it does allow for me to be at my best.
Right. Yeah, no, I can completely relate to that. And, what you're doing with Hemp for Victory is just a great initiative, because there's so many veterans within the community that need the education. They need to break down that, as you put it, that invisible wall, right? And alcoholism and opioid addiction is really not the best path to do that. In fact, it's more of a deterrent, right? It counters that.
Oh yeah. I mean, alcohol is so easy to get to. I mean, it's so easy. It's what we call Class 6. We have a terminology for the liquor store in the military. It's called Class 6. That's how I'm dead serious. That's how important it is to military life. Now, I'm in no way saying that we need to get rid of Class 6. Don't. I enjoy scotch and whiskey. I have drinks all the time with my wife and going out with my friends and things of that nature. I love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't drink a fifth of whiskey every week.
Right.
It takes me a month to get through a 12-pack.
Right.
I just don't drink that often, and I don't drink that often because I don't necessarily need it. Right. What I was substituting the drink for is now being substituted by cannabis, and I'm not having the issues, so I don't have the desire. Now that doesn't work with everybody. Cannabis is about 8% addicting when it comes, from all the studies that we've seen. It's extremely low. Right. Versus like alcohol, which is like 20 to 25%. And you're talking about heroin, all these other things, which have 30 to 40. That's high.
Right.
Right. Some of these opioids are in the 30s. That's high. When you're talking about cannabis isn't addicting. Being happy is addicting.
That's the perfect way to put it, man. Like I've tried, like early on in my relationship with cannabis, like I think I would have to tell like family members or something, like it's not physically addicting. Like
No.
you get addicted to the feeling of like feeling good. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and if I don't have it, I'm not like in bed scratching or fiending. I'm more of like, God, I wish I was high right now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because I would
because
feel better. Like
right. Or sometimes a lot of it's like with everything going on with social media and all this other stuff, right? People get frustrated and easily mad about things they can do nothing about. And this is one of the reasons why I got off Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. So if anybody wants to start a Hemp For Victory page and help do that for Facebook, by all means, get a hold of me. I'm not getting on Facebook.
Don't invite strangers to create a brand page.
Yeah, I know, right?
They're gonna go nuts.
Fucked up. But one of the things about Facebook that I didn't like was that the algorithms in there are about emotional response, and they try to trigger as much emotional response, but it's the wrong type of emotional response.
Right.
I'm getting mad at people for shit I shouldn't be getting mad at, and I said that's not good. It's like a poison in my system.
It's a poison, man, and they do it to trigger you.
I cut it out. I didn't mind. I don't mind showing up to Christmas not knowing who the hell's gone and you know who's been sick and who got in a car wreck or whatever. If I'm the last to know, fine by me. I'm okay about it.
That's because the only way to do it. Yeah.
Sometimes that's the only way. I don't need to be the first person to know. I don't need that instant connect like I thought we did. And so I became more about my own self. I started to enjoy more things that I enjoy. Right. And that's it, man. Be content in your life. And one of the things I always tell people that when it comes to the cannabis industry, one of the things everybody loves to talk about is how it makes you feel, and it solves certain medical issues and all this other stuff. But the good thing about tools like this and psilocybin is that it can get you to the point where you are most comfortable mentally, physically, to truly enjoy your life. Right. For you to be able to wake up and see people go and watch a sunrise and really feel that warmth build up in your body as the sun goes over the mountains, right? You want to have that feeling because that's part of being human. That's a wonderful thing about being human. But if you have clouded, energy from all this, and I don't want to sound like a gypsy or anything like that, but if you have that kind of clouded energy from all the pills that you've been taking, your brain's rewired from all that. I mean, that's stuff they learned about. We realized that PTSD is because the brain's been rewired through several shocks through trauma or from impacts of IEDs. And so the brain gets rewired, and you need to be able to use a tool to balance that out. And when we can teach more people that to be balanced and everything else, you're going to see far more love out there. And that's what we need. At the end of the day, geez.
I totally agree, Robert. I think that's a beautiful place to end it, man. I mean, I don't want to trump that beautiful, I guess monologue that you said, but I mean, it's all true. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your relationship with cannabis, but also, all the great work again that Hemp For Victory is doing for the veteran community and really educating and helping those veterans break down that invisible barrier, because we need help, right? I mean, especially when, we're dealing with things in a mental capacity. So
that's right.
Robert, let's have you back on real soon, my man.
I love it, man. I enjoyed the conversation, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
I did as well. And when if I'm in Austin, I'm looking you up. We're going to hang out.
All right. Well, I'm up in Dallas. So.
Oh, you're in Dallas. Shit. Okay.
Yeah. Where are you at?
Oh, we're close. I was in Dallas for the past 11 years, but I just moved to the burbs, so I'm only like 45 minutes away. So
man, you're right. Yeah, I'm in Carrollton, man. I'm like right up the road.
Let's grab a scotch or whiskey or
I like that
time, man.
Definitely doing lunch. You got it, brother.
Cool.
Right on, man. Robert. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you all for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.